Hello, welcome to The Conversation on News Central Television. This is the program where we bring you up to speed with all the political happenings on the African continent. I am Gbenga Aborowa.
And I am Rita Omodia. It's been about 2 days since the presidential election, 3 days actually, since presidential elections in Nigeria on Saturday. And finally today, it's no news. The Independent National Electoral Commission has declared the winner of the election. And we have it that the race in Nigeria's 2023 election has finally come to an end as the Independent National Electoral Commission has declared the All Progressives Congress presidential candidate Bola Tinubu as the president-elect.
The president-elect Bola Tinubu has asked the PDP, Labour Party and other Greek parties not to resort to violence, but approach the court to seek redress over the claims that Saturday's presidential elections was marked by rigging. This and more will be unpacked for the next 1 hour. It's finally over. I feel it's 4 or 5 days.
Is it over? Is it really over?
It's. I mean, the process is over and they've declared a winner. So it started on Saturday. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay, that's about like
5 days.
5 days, wow.
Yes, and the wait is finally over.
Definitely. News Central TV, we've been here all day since Saturday trying to bring you live updates, a collation of results at the INEC National Center. And with all the disputes from the PDP, the Labour Party.
So much intrigues and drama, and but it's not over yet because we're expecting, I'm sure when we talk to a panel of experts on today's show, we can project what to expect. But congratulations to the president-elect and to Nigerians for keeping at the peace.
Yeah, because everyone was actually calm. I was expecting, well, not necessarily expecting, but with the dissent that we had all over with the whole presidential results, everybody just comes. Seems like life has just gone back to normal and everybody's just going back to normal businesses.
We're not done yet. There's an election to hold next Sunday.
Yeah, the governorship election.
The governorship and State House of Assembly elections. But let's talk about today's issues. The Independent National Electoral Commission on Wednesday declared the All Progressive Congress candidate Bola Tinubu winner of the 2023 presidential election conducted nationwide on Saturday, polling a total of 8,794,726 votes. The APC candidate defeated 17 other candidates who contested the elections. Closely behind was the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, with 6,984,520 votes in the election. Peter Obi of the Labour Party came third in the election, with a total of 6,101,533 votes, while Rabiu Kwankwanso of the NNPP came fourth with 1,496,687 votes.
While results have been announced, questions still arise on the validity of the elections and the authenticity of the APC candidate as the winner of the presidential elections. Opposition parties have since called for the cancellation of the February 25 polls, which they claim was marked by irregularities. The president-elect Bola Tinubu has since called on all to unite and defend the nation's integrity. Today, the president-elect received his certificate of return from INEC for winning last Saturday's presidential election. And joining us for this conversation, we have Timi Olagunju, is a lawyer, policy consultant, founder Youth in Motion. He joins us from Ibadan, Nigeria. We also have Taiwo, Public Affairs Analyst. He joins us from Lagos, Nigeria. Gentlemen, welcome to the conversation. All right, but before we get straight into the conversations, let's take a look at what the president-elect Bola Tinubu had to say at his acceptance speech.
To you, the people, especially the youth, I will work day and night. I will work to the utmost best of my ability to make Nigeria better. For this to be a victory at all, it cannot simply be a victory for one man or even one party. It must become a victory for all Nigerians who are committed to a greater society. I know many did not vote for me, and you are disappointed that your candidate is not where I stand now I understand you're hot. Your anger, disappointment. I extend the embrace and comfort of one family member to another. This great project called Nigeria beckons to us all. It is bigger and more important than any partition divide. To my supporters, I ask you to continue to have faith in the mission that we have articulated. Though those who didn't support me, I ask that you not allow the disappointment of this moment to keep you from realizing the historic national progress we can make by working together.
It's still the conversation. We still have Timi, Olagunju, and Taiwo Osanyin. And I'm going to begin with you, Timi. You are a lawyer, policy consultant, founder Youth in Motion. And one of the starter points for Bola Ahmed Tinubu, president-elect, was he spoke to the youths and he mentioned the fact that he would work day and night to build a greater Nigeria. He also talked about the fact that many people are disappointed because they did not vote for him. I mean, what struck you most about that speech when you heard it as a youth?
Frankly, nothing.
Oh, why?
You can't build something on nothing. The basis of the election itself is characterized by high levels of illegality and violation of the very laws that guide the electoral process. And so you can't build something on nothing, actually.
But didn't you see a sign of him trying to reconcile all the differences? I mean, he wasn't shutting out anybody. He's more of saying, everybody, let's come together and build Nigeria, even though for some people that did not vote for me, it's more like trying to unite people at this point.
Well, it's easy to say that when you're on the winning side. Shakespeare said something years ago, which still stands till date, that what you do speaks so loud, I can't hear what you say. I think that characterizes this election and the candidacy of Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
So I'd like to stay with you, Timi, before we move to Taiwo, because you're a legal practitioner. Now, President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his acceptance speech did say that aggrieved parties should not resort to violence and also seek redress in the courts. Are you expecting litigation to come? Because in your opening statement, you did say that the electoral process was flawed. Are we expecting litigation? And how confident are you in the Nigerian judicial system to deliver to those that felt aggrieved by the entire process? Not just the presidential elections, also the legislative elections that took place last Saturday.
Well, yes, there should be expected litigation. That is what typifies or epitomizes a democracy. But in terms of the confidence in courts, evidence is the end of arguments. And so the evidence, like the saying, those who forget history are doomed to repeat same. The evidence in history depicts the fact that the courts of law have not delivered justice that is not just done, but evidently seen to be done. And that is the challenge. However, it's important to sue for peace because Nigeria is bigger than the entity of one person or interest.
Tinubu's speech, it is obvious that he is aware that a lot of people did not actually vote for him. I mean, he mentioned it. But looking at the man Tinubu, he has consistently played major roles in party politics since 1992 when he was elected senator for Lagos West District. But this is his first time gunning for presidency after so many years of being at the background. Now declared presidency. I mean, from what you've known about him, how would you chronicle his journey to the presidency?
Well, if that question is for me, I would say that I will chronicle his journey to the presidency as the journey of an ambitious person who says much more than that is against what he does, because the election itself does not depict any form of legality in itself. One of the most respected presidents of Nigeria, may his soul rest in peace, President Yaradua, was also brought in by a fraught election, and he admitted that reality first, that this election is fraught with, but we would improve on the process. But this particular election is even much worse than the elections that brought in President Yaradua in itself. And so, to a large extent, non-admittance of that to start with is itself does not show the depth of introspective realization of the fact that the fragile Nigeria that we have has become more fragile than it was a few years ago.
You did make a point. I want to take you back to the point you made about this elections worse than the elections in 2007. I believe they brought in former President Umaru Yaradua, Shehu Musa Yaradua. What evidence do you have to speak to that point, that the conduct of these elections worse than the Yaradua elections? And what do you have to back up your claims?
Well, I do not know the intentions of political parties that are aggrieved by the situation. But as a Nigerian, my evidence is the fact that my polling units where a particular party won, and we had evidence of the Form EC8A, right? That's the result sheet. Mm-hmm. And then, because charity begins at home, I have to start with my polling units and the ones that I'm aware of. And shockingly, at the University of Ibadan, that polling unit, when the final results were sent, and we had to go look at the polling unit, we saw that there was a flagrant rechange of the results as against what we had presented. Right, so for that, I am appalled by that. On a more personal note, now, on a more legal perspective, the Electoral Act is clear. Section 6057 talks to the effect. The Electoral Act is clear as to the need to use beavers to accredit and upload results. In other words, the Electoral Act spells out that INEC should make guidelines to the conduct of the election. And when INEC makes that guidelines, it must be bound by the guidelines. But INEC made a guideline that it did not adhere to. As we speak to you, less than 70% of the polling unit results have been uploaded. And as at 12 a.m. at the midnight of the next day of the election, no single result had been uploaded, which speaks to the fact that there is a flagrant, violation of the rules that set the game. It's simple. When there is a set rule for a game, and the person or a set of people violate that rule, can we adjudge the winner of that game as the true winner? That's the key question here.
Okay, thank you, Timi. I'd like to bring in Taiwo from Ikoyi here in Lagos into the conversation. Hello, good afternoon, Taiwo. Yeah, Taiwo, so we're done with the first part of this round of elections, the presidential and parliamentary elections, the elections that are built for the 11th of March, next week, Saturday, for the gubernatorial and State House of Assemblies elections. There's been a plethora of complaints against INEC and the conduct of these elections. A lot of people saying they fell short of being free and fair. INEC has less than 2 weeks to prepare for the next elections. Do you see any improvement in the conduct of the elections for the gubernatorial candidate next week, Saturday, or is too little time for improvement?
Well, thank you very much for having me once again, and good afternoon to the Nigerians. Sadly, let me first start my thoughts by saying that I will not congratulate the president-elect, because it's like congratulating a child who cheated in an examination that was exposed before the examination. That being said, on the second part of the forthcoming gubernatorial elections, which is going to hold on the 11th of March, if INEC had over 2 years or almost 3 years to prepare for an election, for a general election that was supposed to be the most successful election in the history of the Federal Republic of Nigeria since its inception to democracy, and has failed flagrantly, publicly, and have disgraced the nation in the international world, making Nigeria a caricature of democracy, then I don't think they can do anything extra or anything spectacular in the next forthcoming election. That being said, this is an organization, or let me put it, this INEC is an organization that was given over 305 billion naira to arrange the best of elections in Nigeria and failed extraordinarily. Let me borrow the thought of my friend in Ibadan, Timi. This is the worst election in the history of Nigeria. We felt, and may so rest in peace, late President Musa Yar'Adua, Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, said the election that brought him into the governance was the most corrupt elections ever. I can tell you for free today that this election is the most corrupt, and I'll tell you the reason why. While Yar'Adua's election was corrupt, was based on corruption, we did not have the opportunity to have technology at the time. Now we have opportunity for technology to revamp the dynamism of our elections, and the electoral body that's supposed to be in charge of that procedure has failed the whole country. I'm not saying that because it's in favor of a particular political party. I wouldn't be on this seat today pained if the electoral process went through the way INEC promised the public that was going to go through, on uploading results from the polling units to the server. But that was not done. So what else is INEC going to tell Nigerians, and Nigerians is going to sit down and listen to? And it's not about the elections of next 2 weeks, March 11. It's about the elections, forthcoming elections that we're going to hold. Number one, currently Nigerians do not trust the system any longer because they feel that INEC have shortchanged them in their demands. This is not about APC. It is not about PDP. Neither is it about Labour Party. Neither is it about NNPP.
Okay, Taiwo, still looking at the trust of INEC. I mean, you've mentioned a whole lot of litany of problems, especially with this last conducted presidential election. Now, one of the things that INEC and even the All Progressives Congress has been saying, and even the Peace Accord said that if there are grievances with the election, then they should go to the tribunal, election petition tribunal, and put in their petitions. I mean, do you think that would be the next step for the opposition? And do you trust the process of the judiciary and the election tribunal?
I would adopt the East African proverb that says when a thief tells you to go to court, just know that his brother is the judge. Now, that being said, it only means, I don't need to say anything more than that. We've had litigations in courts, and the truth of the matter is it's very painful that our elections have to go to the court for the right candidates to be elected as winners. It is absurd. We should grow up beyond these litigations of elections, post-elections. Let the people decide who governs them, who leads them at the polls. If we know that we're going to go to litigations after elections, then let the judges be the decider of who becomes the aspirant for parties, who becomes the candidates for parties, and who wins the elections for the party or the country. Why hold an election and then go after to go and litigate it in court? It doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Then why have to create over how many billions of naira in the Nigerian budget when it's still going to end up in court? There's no sensibility in it.
Thank you, Taiwo. I'd like to bring Timi from Ibadan. Now, Timi, while there were reports of violence, pockets of violence in different parts, it wasn't on a scale as expected, judging by the level of tension in the country. That's one positive. And what else and what steps needs to be done? Because Taiwo did say, not for next week's elections, what steps needs to be taken to address the issues raised during this elections and ensure that future elections are transparent, free, and democratic?
The truth about it is that the violence in these elections were even much more than the scales we could imagine. That's something I need to put on the record, you know.
But while you're saying this, we would like to have probably states that you're mentioning. Exactly. I mean, comparing it, because we have to have facts when we're looking at saying that this election was more violent than other elections.
Yes, not a problem. To keep you safe, I am ready to risk it all. So the point is the fact that I'm saying it, and I'm saying it with my full chest, to the effect of what happened in Rivers State, right? There are video evidences of connivance between thugs and police officers to further intimidate people, even in Lagos State, right? Situations of such nature that we see across Bayelsa State, right? And so it is, you see, evidence is the end of argument, and these things are there in public space. Let's leave the fact that people may post different kinds of videos. There are videos that show connivance between thugs and police officers, politicians and police officers, to the effect of thwarting the will of the people to elect a leader. That is unacceptable, and it has increased significantly. And if you look at the results of the election itself, you see that 24% voter turnout. Is that really true? In an election where the turnout was much massive than any other election since the beginning of the dawn of the Fourth Republic in 1999, right? So that speaks to possibilities of intimidation. And those possibilities are backed up with video evidence that we see of molestations that were carried out in Lagos, Rivers, Bayelsa State, as well as other places. So let's keep the record straight that this is not an election, this is a selection. That means, but going forward, based on the question, the very key important question you asked, is that we must, you see, Nigeria is bigger than the sum of individuals or the interest of one person. And that's why it is quite commendable that the political parties have sued to request for peace from the Nigerian populace. And as you can see, there's so much calm, right? Now, the logical thing going forward is the fact that we need a truly independent INEC. A truly independent INEC. An INEC that its funding is not tied to the apron string of what the executive has to offer it, like someone begging for crumbs from the hands of the master. And that is one key thing. An INEC that is not based on the selection of the president or that is ratified by a rubber-stamped National Assembly that is controlled by an all-powerful president. There is a challenge with the institutional structuring of Nigeria. Elections are increasingly expensive in this country, such that it becomes impracticable to achieve the scale of transparency that we need to bring about a free and fair election.
So the fact that it's even expensive doesn't guarantee quality.
Yeah, exactly. And the scale at which elections are done across the country itself does not seem to favor the transparency of an election until we have a restructured country that is based on a structured confederalism and an independent INEC. We might not be able to have a transparent election at scale in this country.
All right. I want to bring in Taiwo into all of this, and while you were mentioning situations about violence, now one reason why we like facts that I was not there, I wasn't in all the states, and that's why we have coalition observer groups, we have monitoring groups. Now in 2019, the coalition observer group said that 626 people were killed in 2019. This is the reason why we always want the facts laid out straight for these conversations. Now I'm going to go over to Taiwo, where we're looking at the possibility of a more independent INEC in a situation where people are more pleased with the conduct of INEC. Now he talked about a situation where the INEC becomes less dependent on the executive. What do you think are some of the issues that need to be dealt with that would make INEC more independent?
Firstly, I would say to the public and to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, firstly, Yakubu Mahmoud must be immediately arrested for declaring that election. That's the first thing. Number two, he must be able to give relevant accountability of the funds that were proposed for these elections. That being said, when we start doing that, anybody that sits on that seat as the INEC chair will know that Nigerians mean business. And not only that, we do not. If the case it goes beyond this, we might have to invite the International Court of the ICC, the International Court, to begin to start probing persons who hold elections and who are given the mandate for the leadership of the Electoral Commission. That being said, because of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which we all abide by, the executive still, one way or the other, have the powers to control INEC in one way or the other. That is the appointment of the chair and the budget and whatever, even though INEC is the one that actually brings out the budget. But that being said, while we try to put in less powers and control from any arm of government, especially the executive arm, we must also ensure that INEC itself is independent, as its name called, and follows through all necessary INEC procedures in any given elections. That on one side. Without doing that, let's be honest with ourselves, we will all be here speaking English language and no result achieved. Because time in and time out, election in, election out, period of elections, whether it is national, whether it is state, whether it is by-elections, people will not trust this process. And when the people do not trust this process, certainly they will not trust their leaders. And when people don't trust their leaders, certainly good governance can never and ever be given.
Thank you very much, Taiwo. A fine place to go to break. When we return from this break, we'll continue our conversation and also look at the type of government that we should be expecting after May the 29th. Do stay with us. This is The Conversation at News Central Television. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to The Conversation in News Central Television. We're still discussing the Nigeria 2023 elections as APC candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu has emerged as the president-elect after highly controversial and disputed elections. Still have with us Timi Olagunju, a lawyer, policy consultant, founder Youth in Motion Ibadan, and Taiwo Osanyin, a public affairs analyst in Lagos. Now back to you. In Ibadan, Timi Olagunju, what were the shocks? Just looking at the results so far, let's talk about Labour Party. They came into the fray less than 9 months ago, and they've garnered over 6 million votes. They won in 12 states, and they put up a good outing, albeit people saying the elections are disputed and they should have done better than that. What does this say about the political trend in Nigeria, and what is responsible for this seismic shift?
That's a very good question. You know, the seismic shift itself is a product of a discontented people, the people that are not happy with the situation, are people that believe in Nigeria truly, and think that Nigeria deserves better leadership. We can't keep having the worst of us in terms of integrity lead the best of us. Right? And so, in that context, the election as it stands and what we saw is that grievance. It also goes to the fact that Nigeria is highly fragile. Nigeria is ranked top 5 most fragile countries in the world. And why are we fragile? We're fragile because of the increased religious persecution, increased tribal, ethnic-based persecution, increased lack of trust for the leadership to deliver on good governance. Those are key issues as we can see. And so I think those are important precautions that have led to what we see. And that would increase over the period of time.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Taiwo. Taiwo, I mean, while we look at the admirable performance of the Labour Party, I mean, being the first time a third force securing 11 states and the FCT, let's also look at the People's Democratic Party, which has also been on the front burner. I mean, this has been usually a two-horse race, either the All Progressives Congress or the People's Democratic Party. How do you see the tide changing? I mean, PDP was still able to secure 12 states. What's the level of popularity? I mean, if you look at the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party?
Well, I would say first of all, the person or the party that wants congratulations in this election is the Labour Party. And that's the honest truth. Okay. I'm not a Labour Party personnel, I'm not a Labour Party spokesperson. But when results like this come out, I must give credit to the Labour Party. That being said, for the PDP, when you look at the results and you analyze it critically, one thing I realize is when people speak about ethnicity, religion, criteria for this election divide, I tell people that the only reason, or when we look at it critically, is that the people decided and they were tired of bad governance. And if you look at it across all states, Labour Party does not have any sitting governor. So according to politics, it is the governor's responsibility to deliver their state for the party they represent. So, for example, let me put in Lagos, for example, in context. The Lagos state is being controlled by the All Progressives Congress, right?
Yeah.
Now, the Labour Party won in that state. It only simply implies that Lagos state is tired of the APC. That is the simple truth. If the party and the leadership of that party in that state would not deliver that state, it only implies that the people took the mandate by their own hands. Then people remove the conversation of ethnicity and religion of the conversation. That being said, let's look at Rivers State. Now, there was a quagmire between the PDP and the G5 governors.
Yeah.
And in as much as Governor Wike never came out publicly to announce his support for His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it was all glaring in the states. If you go to the state at that time, you all see the posters of the All Progressives Congress all around Port Harcourt, Ikwere, and what have you. And when you see that, it only means that the governor still has the mind of the people, even though the elections have been regarded and alleged to be truncated by the governor of the state, using state forces like the police to actually intimidate people and hijack the election process. That being said, if you look at Plateau State again, Plateau State is a state being controlled by the All Progressive Congress. Now, the Labour Party won in that state. Now, it only shows that the people are tired of that government of that state, that is Lalong. Now, not only did Lalong only lose to the Labour Party in terms of the presidency, he also lost the seat going to Senate. What that implies is that the people are tired. Now, when you move dynamically to the southeast, people may believe or would tend to believe that it's because, it is the Labour Party trigger that people decided to follow. But let's look at, for example, Abia State. His Excellency, the governor of Abia State, lost the Senate seat to the Labour Party. Now, what that implies is not that Labour Party is, as they say, do not have the structure, the political structure to take the state. It only implies that the people are tired of bad governance from the representative of His Excellency, the governor of that state. And that has been the result that has been emanating from what we're seeing today, be it in the presidential election or in the National Assembly elections. And when you look at it across board, you realize that it only speaks of one thing, the people's voice. And when the people speak, as I say, the voice of the people is simply the voice of God.
Thank you, Taiwo. Now, Timi, you are the founder of Youth in Motion, and let's talk about the Nigerian youth. They made up quite an impressive outing in this elections. I was reading a tweet, and a Gen Z person tweeted that, never did I think in my Gen Z life I'll be switching channels from one news station to another station. And as we speak, there's a reality TV show that is ongoing, and Nigerian youths are not interested in it anymore. They are more concerned about the politics. Now, how do you get the youth to sustain this interest? And we do know what the Youth Bulge did in terms of changing the dynamics of the political structure in Nigeria. What would it take to sustain the momentum and keep them interested in this? Because normally what happens in Nigeria is, you have a new government and everybody goes to sleep. A penultimate year to a general election, the opposition wakes up. So my first question is, how do you keep the youth interested in politics? And number two is the role of the opposition. Because government happens every day. How do you keep them to challenge policies, to talk about issues, and do the actual work of opposition and not sleep till the penultimate year before general election?
Timi, are you with us?
Hello, Timi, are you there? Okay, I'll just direct that question to Taiwo while we're trying to establish contact with Timi in Ibadan.
Okay, I've advised the Nigerian youth, which I have actually also belong to, that
exactly
this is a very good time to actually take responsibility of our country and own it. First and foremost, I want to say that if you look at the vote or the voting system, the Labour Party actually was the
Taiwo, can you hear us? Okay.
Okay, Timi, I don't know if you heard my last question. I was talking about the youth demography, which played an important role in these elections, and you are the founder of Youth in Motion. How do you keep the young Nigerians how do you sustain their interest in politics until the next elections? And how do we also make sure that the opposition does its job and not decamp to the winning team? Because that's what we see all the time. We really don't have opposition politics in the real sense of it.
Yeah, you're very right about the fact that there is no sustainability in terms of the momentum. For example, opposition should serve the purpose of shadow cabinets, right?
Yeah.
Opposition should have ministers in quotes as shadow ministers, people that can speak to policy issues that the government is actually trying to implement, and speak to the fact that those policies are either good for the people or can be better, right? So that's very important framework that we need to evolve over time. But as it stands, right, the youth momentum of Bulge is a most recent development, right? There has been largely a lot of apathy over the years. And That apathy has been a product of the fact that most young people do not see a candidate that aligns with their interests or speaks to their needs, their desires, their aspirations for Nigeria. However, in this particular election, we had someone who spoke to that largely, and the person of Peter Obi, right, of the Labour Party, spoke to the aspiration of young people. And so, whether young people will continue in that momentum depends largely on how the candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, proceeds further in the engagement of young people. That is a key framework that we need to look at. And we must also agree that the NSAS protests that happened and the disgust of young people at the way the protest was handled by the government, in the sense of what happened, Goodwood was a key fire that lightened the need for youth participation. And you understand that the messaging at that time, which was led by an elder statesman and a few other persons, you find out that someone like Ateto Peterside, right, an accomplished businessman and technocrat, was always suing for peace and telling young people that, look, it has happened, but you have a right to be angry. However, your anger should be channeled towards voting in the election for your leaders. Now, the young people have voted in the elections, but have been burnt. And so in that sense, right, it will take another kind of messaging to enlighten the young people about the reality of the fact that elections is every 4 years. And for every 4 years, after you've exhausted the tussle and the battles in legitimate ways, right?
Yeah.
And it works out or it does not work out, it is not a time to now retire, but a time to refire, in the sense of being involved in galvanizing your movements in a way that you impact community, in a way that you become relevant in communities enough to speak to the issues when the next 4 years come. And that is the reality. Nobody stays in power forever. And that is the beauty of democracy. And that is the messaging that young people need to get and take back their country when the opportunity arrives.
All right, I don't know if we still have Taiwo with us. Taiwo, I don't know if you're still with us, but I still want to continue on this, keeping the momentum for the youth. Okay, while we still try to get Taiwo, Timi, I'm going to throw this question back to you. Now, you talk about putting the youths more involved. Now, involvement is not just in looking at the elections, but also we want a situation where youth participate in elections. But over time, it seems like the election period, or to participate in election, you need to have enough money. Now, how do we deal with that issue so that youths don't only be at the sitting table, or rather just sitting at the elections, or actually be at the talking table? Because if you look at it, Peter Obi is 61 years old, so he's not necessarily in the category of youths. How do we get youths to actually be involved in the politics?
Interestingly, that's a key question you raise. Interestingly, the nature and history of our politics is such that it favors the much older people than it favors the youth. The current statistics of youth of the political office holder states that 65, the average youth of political office holders in Nigeria is 65 years, right? However, the point remains that to get involved in politics, you must get involved in community. And that is the key messaging that young people we need to get across. You must engage in community, you must engage in volunteering. Very key messaging. And so the logic there is to see political participation or policy influencing, not just from holding political office alone, but also from the perspective of engaging in policy influence, engaging in helping to galvanize communities in a way that they can push their advocacy efforts, right? Very important. That is key. However, with the current election, we can actually record significant progress. For example, We have situations where people who don't have the resources, right, who didn't even print posters, won elections for House of Rep and Senate. For example, you have a situation where someone won Senate in Plateau States. And guess what? The guy is a 35-year-old person. Most likely will stand out as the youngest senator in the history of Nigeria. 34 going to 35. 35 years, I think, on the dot. So the point logic is the fact that this election has started a new wave. Now, that wave will only be sustained by the impact that these people that are in office shows. And so the weight of a new generation is borne by this new set of people that are able to enter into the House of Reps and the Senate. And I implore Nigerians that elections are in next Saturday. That is another opportunity to get young people that are not money bags, into the electoral process, so that we can diversify.
Thank you very much, Timi. I would like Taiwo to have the last say on this conversation, because we're fast running out of time. Now, Taiwo, quickly, if you can, in less than a minute, I would appreciate. People have talked about, we can't have this conversation without projecting into the future and looking at the sort of presidency we should be expecting from the new APC government led by President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. What are the pressing issues that needs to be addressed immediately, and what are expectations from his government? What sort of government should we be expecting?
Number one, we must look at security, the economy, infrastructural development, educational development, youth development, human capacity development. These five and health, these six are very critical for this government. That being said, how will the government of the day be able to achieve this? It's simple. Get the get the cabinet immediately on board. But sadly, that will not happen, because there are going to be litigations and counter litigations to considering the outcome of this electoral process, and that may actually affect the process at which this election is going to run. Because sincerely, I still see something dynamic going to happen in the court.
Okay. On that note, we would like to say thank you to Timi Olagunju, lawyer, policy consultant, founder, Youth in Motion, joined in from Ibadan, and Taiwo, Osanyin, public affairs analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And this is how we call it a wrap on today's edition of The Conversation. We have a president-elect being announced by INEC, and we wait to see what happens from the opposition party. We heard that there are going to be press briefings, even from the vice presidential candidates. Will there be a handshake? Will they go to the law courts? Well, only time will tell. I am Rita Omodia. Bye-bye.
And I'm Gbenga Aborowa. See you on Friday for another edition of The Conversation. Bye-bye.